The Law and You, a look at laws in St. Vincent and the Grenadines which affect our daily lives. The Law and You, presented by lawyer panel P.R Campbell QC and brought to you on SVG-TV as a public service.
Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, boys and girls, greetings. Welcome to another presentation in this public service nation-building series, The Law and You. This is program number 863, coming to you on Monday the 29th of May 2017. On this program, I will speak to you on the topic, the presumption of advancement. But before getting into the topic, a few preliminary remarks, beginning as usual with condolences to all those families which have suffered recent bereavements. Now, on Thursday last week, there was celebrated at the Cuban embassy with a reception the 25th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations between St. Vincent and the Grenadines and the Republic of Cuba. And I would like to commend both countries on the celebration of that milestone. Of course, if you have been following this program for any length of time, you would know that I have been one of the strongest supporters of our diplomatic links with Cuba. Not only because of my own disposition in matters of international affairs, not only because of my own knowledge of our history, but also because I am the parent of a student who has benefited from training in a Cuban university at the expense of the government and the people of Cuba, and who has graduated as a civil engineer. I refer to my son, Daniel Tambo Samuel Campbell. And I want once again to thank the government and the people of Cuba for their generosity in extending the hand of friendship in so many ways to St. Vincent and the Grenadines, to other countries of the Caribbean, to assist us with our development without looking for anything in exchange. Those who are old enough will recall the role that Cuba has played in the liberation struggles in southern Africa. Many Cubans gave their lives to the struggle which eventually led to the overthrow of apartheid in South Africa, to the liberation of southwestern Africa. Cuba has helped us in so many ways in the Caribbean, not least being the assistance given with the construction of our largest capital project in our history, the Argyle International Airport. Cuba has trained many of our people as doctors and in other professional fields. And Cuba has done it not out of the abundance of their resources, but out of their own scarce resources. I wish to commend the governments which have seen fit to establish and then to maintain these very strong ties of solidarity with the government and people of Cuba. ironically, Cuba is still under economic embargo established by law in the United States of America. On what grounds? Well, in the days of the Cold War, they used to say that Cuba was spreading communism in the Caribbean and they couldn't have that, and therefore they had to put a block on Cuba's advancement ideologically in the region. They used to say that Cuba has a dictatorial regime, that there are no human rights in Cuba. We have lived to see the United States has apparently dropped its alleged opposition to regimes that do not have the same kind of constitution that they have in the United States of America. The new American president has entertained at the White House very many persons whom the rest of the world castigate as persons having no respect whatsoever as national leaders for democratic values. Thanks to President Obama, who made that historic visit to Cuba, relations have started to thaw out. Let us hope that for the rest of the Trump presidency, we would get something approaching the normalization of relations between Cuba and the United States of America, and let us hope that the embargo that has brought untold havoc to the Cuban economy would be lifted by the Congress of the United States of America. Long live the Cuban Revolution. Long live the excellent relations between Cuba and St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And finally, for preliminary remarks, let me remind you that there is going to be launched here in a few weeks' time a book written by Dr. Cecil Cyrus, his fourth book, called A Harvest Richer Than Gold, of which copies have now landed in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. But there will be a formal launching of the book in the first week in July. And on the next few programs, I will read you short extracts from the book. In my own humble opinion, it is the best of the semi-autobiographical books that Dr. Cyrus has written. Now, Dr. Cyrus has authored 4 books. The first one, A Clinical and Pathological Atlas, consists mainly of medical matters, much of it over my head, but a book which is regarded as a treasure in medical circles. But his other books, Dr. Grandad, A Dream Come True, and now A Harvest Richer Than Gold, are collectively devoted to his life story and his exploits as a medical doctor, a surgeon in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. his books must be compulsive reading for anybody interested in that field. And I want to say to all nurses and indeed all members of the medical profession, you ought to get hold of this latest book, assuming you have the others before. Because even as a lay person, I find it remarkable for the information and the sheer breadth of Dr. Cyrus's experience as a medical doctor. I'll be speaking to you more about that book, A Harvest Richer Than Gold, now in St. Vincent and Grenadines, to be officially launched in the first week of July DV. Okay, having said all of that, I now turn to the topic for the evening, the presumption of advancement. Excuse me. Now, the law is filled with a number of concepts, some of which are called presumptions. And in a nutshell, a presumption in the law means that given a certain kind of fact, then a certain conclusion inevitably follows, unless those facts change. So that if you go to court and you succeed in establishing that such and such a state of affairs qualifies as a presumption of law, and you base your case on that presumption, you are likely to prevail in your argument before the judge unless the other side can show either that the presumption has not been satisfied, or that there are other facts which have been brought forward in the case to overthrow the presumption. That is called to rebut the presumption. Now, I know it might still be difficult to grasp, but as usual, as I normally do on the law and you, I will try to break it down as simply as I can. The presumption of advancement means simply this: where there is a particular kind of relationship a transfer of money or property from one party in that relationship to the other is regarded as a gift and not a loan, not anything being held in trust. The presumption of advancement is a common law concept. It comes from the old common law. And you should know by now, any rule of law based on the common law can be changed by Parliament. And over the years, hundreds of common law rules have been changed by acts of Parliament. And if there is any time when there is a clash between a common law rule and an act of Parliament, the act of Parliament prevails. Because you cannot use the common law to go above an act of the legislature and Act of Parliament. Acts of Parliament always prevail over the common law. So that all those countries which got common law from England have made changes to the common law over the years. And where the presumption of advancement is concerned, very many countries of the British Commonwealth, the former British Commonwealth I should say, have changed the rules governing the presumption of advancement. Some have abolished the rule in relation to certain relationships, and not others, and vice versa in some countries. In St. Vincent and the Grenadines, however, we still have the presumption of advancement in its common law form. And that says that if a father gives property or money to a child, one of his children, and nothing is said about the nature of the gift, the common law presumes that it is an outright gift to the child to whom the father has given that money or property. What if it is a mother giving it to her son or daughter? Well, that is where we begin to encounter some differences of opinion amongst legal writers and indeed the judges. In the common law, the question has arisen as to whether gifts among spouses come under the presumption of advancement. Some of the common law cases say yes, if you say no. Some say a gift from a husband to a wife without any qualification is in accordance with the presumption of advancement, that is an outright gift. But from wife to husband, it is not. And the question arises, which is the sounder view? I tend to think that the sounder view would be gifts between spouse, whether from husband to wife or wife to husband, given that the law has moved on in matters of marital equality. Same would apply to gifts from mothers to their children. Let me right now distinguish between the gifts we are speaking about from deeds of gift. Deeds of gift are not subject to the presumption of advancement because by their very nature they are outright gifts. So if a deed of gift is registered between parents and children, between siblings, in fact, even between strangers. Once it is registered, of course, if it's between strangers, you have to pay the full stamp duty. Nowadays, if it's between brothers and sisters, sisters and brothers, you have to pay the stamp duty. But between parents and children, husbands and wives, no stamp duty on deeds of gift. If it is a deed of gift, which is signed, sealed, delivered, and registered at the registry, the question of advancement doesn't arise because it is already a gift by the nature of the document itself. So perhaps when I said property a while ago, I should have said movable property, personal property, not house and land. Movable property is anything that is not land or anything that is not affixed permanently to land. Carries the same definition as personal property, and it encompasses any item capable of being given, of being moved about. A board house, a chattel house, in other words, is regarded as personal property because you can take it from place to place. A wall house is regarded as part of the land. So a wall house is regarded as real property, but a board house, by virtue of the fact that it can be removed from location to location, is regarded as personal property. Personal property can be animals, vehicles, wearing apparel, jewelry, tools, money. All of that is personal property. So that the question might arise, say between a father and his son or daughter, as to whether a certain sum of money that was given by father to the son or daughter was given as a gift or as a loan. That is where the presumption of advancement comes in, because the presumption of advancement says the law presumes that money given by a parent to children, let us say, use the exact example I gave, by a father to a son or daughter, is presumed to be an advancement, a gift outright. But what if there is evidence to prove that when the father transferred that money to his son or daughter, he made it clear that he was lending the son or daughter the money? Well, if there is evidence of a loan, the presumption of advancement does not apply. The presumption would have been rebutted, because you can always bring forward evidence to rebut any presumption of law. Some say it is merely a presumption of evidence. Now, the flip side of the presumption of advancement is that of what is called in law a resulting trust. So if the question arises as to whether a transfer of personal property or money from a parent to a child is a presumption of advancement, and it is not, it will then be a resulting trust. That is, if that child who receives the money or personal property is shown not to have received it as an outright gift, it means that he or she would have received it in trust for the person who, the parent who would have given it. So that in the law books you usually find the comment that the presumption of advancement and the presumption of resulting trust are two different sides of the same coin. As usual, where there are transactions involving large sums of money, it is always better if something is put in writing to say what the money is for. If it is a gift, there should be something in writing to say, look, I am giving this to X or Y. If it is a loan, there should be something in writing to say, this is just a loan. If it's just for the person to hold the money or the property for somebody else, or in the case of some eventuality, there should be something saying that. All it takes is a visit to a lawyer's chambers. You say to the lawyer, okay, good morning, sir or madam. This is my son or daughter, and I would like to give or lend my son or daughter X amount of money. Can you draw a document that we both can sign to that effect? And that is something that could be done now for now, at very little cost. That way, there is no problem if a document is drawn up, signed by one parent, signed by the child who is getting it, to say what that money is for, or what is to happen to that piece of that item of personal property. But it is when we do these transactions without anything being clearly said, even if it is not in writing, and it is spoken in the presence of witnesses, their evidence is admissible in a court of law to say what they heard on the occasion in which the transfer took place. Best evidence is in writing, signed by the persons involved and witnessed. Second best evidence is in the form of conversations, the spoken word, witnessed by credible witnesses who are willing to swear on oath as to what they heard. But in the absence of writing, in the absence of evidence from witnesses, what you have is doubt, controversy, and at the end of the day, disappointment by one side or another. So I hope you understand a little bit now about the presumption of advancement. But if you are in any situation in which you have to determine conclusively one way or the other, please seek legal advice. Okay? All right, well, that is all from this program of The Law and You, program number 863. I look forward to being of further service to you next week, Monday, DB, for this public service nation-building series, The Law and You. And to those of you who are Americans, Blessed Memorial Day. Very important day, commemorating the lives of those who have died in the service of the United States of America. May the good Lord continue to bless us all.
The Law and You, a look at laws in St. Vincent and the Grenadines which affect our daily lives. The Law and You, presented by lawyer panel P.R Campbell QC and brought to you on SVG-TV as a public service.